Rihanna, disguised as a cleaning lady, checks out her company. What she discovers changes everything. Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching us from. The sprawling office of Fenty Beauty glistened in the early morning sunlight. The vast glass windows framed a breathtaking view of the city, with its bustling streets and towering skyscrapers. Inside, the room was a haven of minimalism and elegance. Every detail from the cream-colored walls to the sleek black furniture spoke of refinement and success. Yet, the woman sitting at the polished desk seemed oblivious to the grandeur surrounding her. Rihanna leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes fixed on a report lying on the desk. The normally vibrant energy she exuded was subdued, replaced by a furrowed brow and a pensive frown. Across from her stood Marcus, her most trusted confidant and head of employee relations. His tone was measured, but the weight of his words was undeniable. "They've filed complaints before, but it's becoming more frequent," Marcus said, tapping the folder he had brought in. "Racial slurs, dismissive attitudes, and even outright mockery. And it's not just customers, Ree. It's coming from within. The staff, the managers." Rihanna's jaw tightened. She glanced at the glossy photographs of Fenty Beauty campaigns lining the walls, smiling faces of diverse models, each poster bearing the company's famous slogan, "Beauty for All." The reports Marcus had brought painted a picture far from the inclusive ethos she had worked so hard to create. "This is unacceptable," she said, her voice low but resolute. "Fenty was built on the idea of breaking barriers. How can this be happening under my roof?" Marcus hesitated before responding, his tone softening. "You know, sometimes the culture at the top doesn't always trickle down the way we think it does. You've got good intentions, but the day-to-day realities in the branches, they're different. You're not there to see it." His words struck a chord. Rihanna had always prided herself on being hands-on, but the rapid growth of her empire had made it impossible to oversee every detail. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk and steepling her fingers in thought. "I need to see this for myself," she finally said. "Not through reports, not through second-hand accounts. I need to feel what they feel, hear what they hear." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You mean visit one of the branches?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "If I walk in as myself, they'll all straighten up. No one will show their true colors. I need to go undercover." Marcus stared at her, dumbfounded. "You're serious?" "As serious as this," she replied, holding up the report. "If even one person feels degraded or excluded because of how they look, then we've failed. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." The determination in her voice silenced any protest Marcus might have had. He nodded reluctantly. "All right, but if you're doing this, we need to do it right. No one can recognize you." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Rihanna worked with a professional disguise artist, someone who specialized in transforming appearances. The sessions were painstaking. Her smooth, glowing complexion was dulled with makeup to create the appearance of uneven skin tone. Her signature hair was hidden under a plain brown wig, and her piercing eyes were masked by thick-framed glasses. The transformation was astonishing. When Rihanna looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. She was now Monica Brown, a 36-year-old single mother of two, struggling to make ends meet and eager to secure a job at Fenty Beauty. Her voice coach helped her adopt a more timid tone, and her wardrobe was carefully selected to reflect her new persona. Simple jeans, scuffed sneakers, and a faded sweatshirt that had seen better days. Every detail was meticulously planned to make her blend in. Finally, the day arrived. Rihanna, or rather Monica, walked into one of the busiest Fenty Beauty branches in the heart of the city. The store was a hive of activity with employees bustling about and customers browsing the shelves of brightly packaged products. The vibrant energy of the space was infectious, but as Monica stepped inside, she felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. She approached the hiring manager, a no-nonsense woman named Kate, who barely glanced at her during the brief interview. The questions were curt and the instructions were brusque. By the end of their interaction, Monica was handed a mop and a bucket with a dismissive wave. "Start with the floors," Kate said without looking up from her clipboard. "Bathrooms next. Make it quick." Monica nodded, gripping the mop handle tightly. She scanned the room, her heart sinking as she caught the disdainful looks from some of the other employees. They didn't even bother to hide their judgment. To them, she was invisible, a background figure meant to serve. That first shift was grueling. Monica scrubbed floors, emptied trash bins, and cleaned mirrors, all while dodging scornful remarks and sidelong glances. One employee, a young woman in a sharp blazer, deliberately spilled her coffee and called out, "Hey, cleaner, mind taking care of this?" The mocking tone was unmistakable. Monica knelt to clean the mess, biting back the sharp retort that bubbled inside her. She reminded herself of her mission: to observe, to understand, and to uncover the truth. By the end of the day, her arms ached and her pride was bruised. She retreated to her modest apartment, another part of the disguise, and collapsed onto the worn-out couch. Exhaustion was physical, but the emotional toll was even greater. She thought about the employees who had treated her poorly, and a pang of anger coursed through her. But beneath the anger was sadness. This wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever felt diminished or dehumanized because of their position or their skin color. As she drifted off to sleep, her resolve hardened. This was only the beginning. The morning sunlight poured through the narrow window of the small apartment that Monica now called her temporary home. Rihanna stirred awake, the ache in her arms and back a stark reminder of her first day on the job. Gone were the luxuries of her usual mornings, the silk sheets, the carefully curated playlists, the calming aroma of her favorite coffee. This morning was different. The air was stale and the sounds of traffic and distant sirens replaced the tranquility of her estate. She rose and prepared for her second day, meticulously maintaining her disguise. Her hair, tucked under the plain brown wig, framed a face made deliberately unremarkable by makeup that dulled her natural glow. The thick glasses sat heavily on her nose, and her outfit, a pair of loose jeans and a faded sweatshirt, completed the illusion. She stared at herself in the cracked mirror, taking a deep breath. "Day 2, she whispered to her reflection. "Time to see what they're really like." By the time she arrived at the Fenty Beauty branch, the store was already bustling with activity. The bright lights highlighted the polished shelves lined with colorful products. Customers floated through the aisles, testing lipsticks and eyeshadows, chatting animatedly with the sales associates. To them, the space was a haven of beauty and self-expression. To Monica, it was a stage where hidden truths waited to reveal themselves. Kate, the manager, spotted her immediately. With a sharp nod, she motioned Monica over. "You're late," Kate said curtly, despite the fact that Monica had arrived 10 minutes early. "There's a spill in aisle 3. Take care of it before someone slips." Monica nodded, swallowing her frustration, and retrieved the mop and bucket. She moved quickly to aisle 3, where a puddle of foundation smeared across the pristine white tiles. As she worked to clean it, A pair of employees passed by, their conversation loud enough for her to overhear. "Did you see her?" one of them whispered, gesturing toward Monica. "She looks like she hasn't showered in days." The other laughed. "Guess that's what happens when all you do is mop floors for a living." Monica's grip on the mop tightened. She kept her head down, but their words echoed in her mind. It wasn't the first time she had faced such disdain. She had heard similar comments during her early days in the music industry. Back then, she had used those moments as fuel, pushing herself harder. Now, she wondered how many others had faced the same treatment and had no platform to fight back. The day wore on, each task blending into the next. Monica cleaned the bathrooms, scrubbed counters, and replenished supplies, all while enduring the occasional sneer or dismissive remark. But not everyone was unkind. During a brief lull, a young woman approached her near the storage room. She was petite, with curly hair pulled into a neat bun and wide, curious eyes. "Hi," she said hesitantly. "I'm Latia. You're new, right?" Monica nodded, offering a small smile. "I just wanted to say you're doing a great job," Latia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know it's not easy around here." Monica's heart softened at the sincerity in Latia's words. "Thank you," she replied. "That means a lot." Their conversation was interrupted by Kate's sharp voice calling Latia back to the front. The young woman scurried away, leaving Monica alone with her thoughts. That brief exchange was a flicker of light in an otherwise dreary day. As the afternoon stretched into evening, the demands became more relentless. Kate assigned Monica to clean the staff break room, a space cluttered with discarded wrappers, half-empty coffee cups, and crumbs scattered across every surface. "Make sure it's spotless," Kate said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We have standards, even for the help." Monica clenched her jaw and set to work. As she wiped the tables, she noticed a group of employees lounging in the corner, their laughter filling the room. One of them, a tall man with a sharp suit and an air of arrogance, glanced in her direction. "Hey, cleaner," he called out, smirking. "You missed a spot." The others laughed, and Monica felt her cheeks flush with anger and humiliation. She forced herself to remain composed, silently finishing her task before retreating to the supply closet to gather her thoughts. Leaning against the wall, she closed her eyes and took deep breaths. This wasn't just about her. She was here to expose the truth, to understand the depths of the problem. But the weight of it all was heavier than she had anticipated. By the time her shift ended, the store was quiet, the bustling energy replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights. Monica clocked out and made her way to the bus stop, her feet aching and her spirit drained. As the bus rumbled through the city streets, she stared out the window, her mind replaying the events of the day. The disdain in Kate's voice, the mocking laughter in the break room, the fleeting kindness of Latia, all of it painted a picture of a workplace that was far from the inclusive haven Fenty Beauty claimed to be. Back in her apartment, Monica sank onto the couch, too exhausted to eat. She pulled out a notebook and began jotting down her observations. Management, dismissive and condescending. Colleagues, mixed, some openly hostile, others indifferent. Rare moments of kindness. Atmosphere, tense and hierarchical. She stared at the list, her pen hovering over the page. Was this just one branch, or was it a reflection of deeper systemic issues within her company? As the night deepened, Monica found herself thinking about Latia. The young woman's quiet bravery stood out in stark contrast to the hostility of others. Perhaps she could learn more from her in the coming days. Determined to continue her mission, Monica set her notebook aside and lay down, her mind swirling with plans and questions. Tomorrow would be another test, another chance to uncover the truth. And she wouldn't stop until she had the answers she needed. The morning sun crept over the city skyline, casting golden light on the streets below. Monica sat quietly on the crowded bus, her thoughts heavy with the weight of the previous 2 days. She had woken up before dawn, her body aching from hours of relentless cleaning, but the pain in her muscles was nothing compared to the simmering anger and frustration she felt. Each moment of derision, each dismissive glance and cruel comment replayed in her mind like a haunting refrain. The bus jolted to a stop, and she stepped off into the crisp morning air, clutching her bag. The familiar facade of the Fenty beauty store loomed ahead, its sleek, modern design a stark contrast to the harsh reality behind its doors. Today, Monica was determined to dig deeper, to see just how entrenched the toxic culture was. As she entered the building, she was greeted not with warm smiles or cheerful chatter, but with the sharp, disapproving gaze of Kate. The manager stood near the front desk, clipboard in hand, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're late," Kate snapped, though Monica was, in fact, 5 minutes early. "Sorry," Monica mumbled, knowing it was pointless to argue. Kate gestured toward a cart filled with cleaning supplies. "Start with the bathrooms. They're a mess after last night. And when you're done, the mirrors need to be spotless. I don't want to see a single smudge." Monica nodded and headed toward the bathrooms, her resolve hardening with each step. The tiled floors were sticky, the sinks crusted with residue from makeup samples. She worked methodically, scrubbing until her hands ached, all the while overhearing snippets of conversation from the sales associates who passed by. "She's so slow," one whispered, her voice dripping with disdain. "I don't know why they keep people like her around." Another laughed. "Maybe because no one else would take the job." The words stung, but Monica kept her focus, determined not to let them see her falter. As she moved to clean the mirrors, a tall man in a tailored suit entered the room. It was Connor, the assistant manager, known for his sharp tongue and condescending demeanor. "Still here?" he said with a smirk, crossing his arms as he leaned against the doorframe. "I figured you'd quit by now. Most people in your position don't last long." Monica forced a neutral expression. "Just doing my job," Connor chuckled, his eyes scanning her with a mix of amusement and disdain. "Well, try to do it faster. The VIPs don't like seeing workers lingering around." She bit her tongue, resisting the urge to snap back. Connor's comment wasn't just a jab at her work ethic, it was a reminder of how little he thought of her. The rest of the day followed the same pattern. Tasks were piled on her with little regard for their feasibility, and every mistake, no matter how small, was met with scorn. At one point, Kate pulled her aside to reprimand her for leaving a single fingerprint on a glass display. "This is unacceptable," Kate said, her voice cold and clipped. "If you can't handle basic cleaning, maybe you're not cut out for this job." Monica nodded silently, her fists clenched at her sides. Inside, she seethed. Was this how they treated all their employees, or was it reserved for those they deemed beneath them? The breaking point came later that afternoon. A young sales associate deliberately knocked over a tray of lipsticks, sending them clattering to the floor. "Oops," she said with a smirk, looking directly at Monica. "Can you get that?" Monica crouched to pick up the scattered products, her hands trembling with suppressed rage. As she worked, she overheard the associate mutter to a colleague, "I don't know why they even bother hiring people like her. It's not like she's going to move up." The comment hit her like a punch to the gut. She had expected challenges, but the sheer brazenness of the discrimination was staggering. Later, during her break, Monica retreated to the cramped supply closet, her sanctuary amidst the chaos. She sank onto a small stool, her head in her hands. The notebook she had been using to document her experiences lay open on a nearby shelf, its pages filled with observations and raw emotions. Management continues to enforce a culture of fear and control. No empathy. Colleagues, hostility from some, indifference from others. A few glimmers of kindness. Environment, toxic and dehumanizing. She stared at the list, her thoughts swirling. This wasn't just a bad day. It was a systemic issue, a rot that had taken root in the very foundations of the company she had built. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was Latia, the young sales associate who had shown her kindness before. "Hey," Latia said hesitantly, stepping inside. I saw what happened earlier. Are you okay?" Monica forced a small smile. "I'm fine. Thanks for checking." Latia hesitated, then sat down on a stack of boxes. "You know, you're not the only one they treat like this. I've been here for 6 months, and it's been hard." Monica's heart ached at the vulnerability in Latia's voice. "Why don't you say something? File a complaint?" Latia shook her head. "It won't change anything. They only care about the numbers, about looking good on the outside. People like me, people like us, we're expendable to them." The words hung heavy in the air. Monica felt a surge of anger, not at Latia, but at the system that had made her feel this way. "You're not expendable," Monica said firmly. "None of us are." Latia looked at her, surprise flickering in her eyes. For a moment, there was a shared understanding between them, a bond forged in the crucible of shared struggle. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. By the time Monica clocked out, her body was exhausted, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had seen enough to confirm what she had feared. The toxic culture wasn't a fluke or an isolated incident. It was a pervasive problem that demanded immediate action. As she rode the bus home, the city lights flickering outside the window, Monica made a silent vow. She would endure whatever it took to expose the truth. Not just for herself, but for every employee who had been silenced, belittled, or ignored. This wasn't just a mission, it was a fight for justice. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly in the break room as Monica sat in a far corner, quietly nibbling on a sandwich she had packed that morning. Around her, the room hummed with the chatter of employees, some discussing the latest product launches, others gossiping about office drama. She had been careful to keep a low profile, blending into the background as much as possible. The events of the past few days had solidified her role as an outsider, a figure of mockery or, at best, indifference. Today, though, the weight of her observations pressed more heavily than ever. The cruelty she had witnessed was not random, it was systemic, a deeply ingrained culture that thrived unchecked. And yet, amidst the hostility, there had been moments of kindness, rare and fleeting, but enough to give her hope. She glanced at the door just as it swung open, and Latia stepped in, her expression cautious but warm. The young woman carried a small tray of snacks, which she placed on the counter before hesitating, then making her way over to Monica. "Mind if I sit here?" Latia asked, her voice soft but steady. Monica nodded, motioning to the seat across from her. "Of course." The two women sat in silence for a moment, the air between them heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Latia broke the quiet. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, her fingers nervously fiddling with the edge of her name tag, "about what's been happening." Monica tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Latia leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I see how they treat you. It's not right. And it's not just you. It's anyone who doesn't fit their mold." Monica's gaze sharpened. "Their mold? You know," Latia said, her voice barely above a whisper, "people like us. People who don't look like them or act like them. If you're not perfect in their eyes, you're nothing." The words hit Monica like a punch to the gut. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed by someone within the system made it all the more real. "Have you ever said anything about it?" Monica asked gently. Latia shook her head, her curls bouncing with the motion. "What's the point? They don't listen, and even if they do, they just find a way to turn it back on you. I've seen it happen before." Monica's jaw tightened. "That doesn't mean we should stay silent." Latia looked at her with a mixture of admiration and fear. "You don't understand. They'll crush you if you try to fight back. They always do." Before Monica could respond, the door creaked open again, and Kate entered, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Her gaze landed on the two women, and her lips curled into a thin, disapproving line. "Break's over," Kate said curtly. "Back to work." Latia rose quickly, murmuring a quick goodbye before hurrying out of the room. Monica followed at a slower pace, her mind racing. The conversation with Latia had only deepened her resolve. She couldn't allow this toxic environment to persist, not in a company that bore her name and stood for values she held dear. As the day wore on, Monica began to notice more details, subtle and overt, that painted a clearer picture of the culture within the store. She watched as Kate barked orders at a cashier, her tone unnecessarily harsh. She saw Connor, the assistant manager, belittle a trainee in front of customers, the young man's face flushing with humiliation. But there were also moments of quiet resistance. Latia, despite her fear, went out of her way to help a customer who had been ignored by other staff. Another employee, a janitor named Miguel, offered Monica a kind smile as he passed her in the hallway, his simple gesture a beacon of humanity in an otherwise cold environment. It was during one of these fleeting moments of connection that Miguel stopped her near the storage room. "Hey," he said, his voice low but kind. "You're new here, right?" Monica nodded. "Yeah, been here a few days." Miguel glanced around to ensure no one was listening before leaning in slightly. "Just watch your back. They don't make it easy for people like us." "People like us?" Monica echoed, though she knew exactly what he meant. Miguel gave her a knowing look. "You'll see." The cryptic warning stayed with her as she continued her shift. By the time the store closed, Monica was physically exhausted but mentally energized. She returned to her apartment, pulling out her notebook to document the day's events. Observation: clear favoritism among management. Discrimination based on race and perceived status. Employees: mixed responses, some complicit, others quietly resistant. Next steps: build trust with allies. Gather more evidence. The next morning, Monica arrived early, determined to dig deeper. She sought out Latia during a quiet moment, finding her restocking shelves near the back of the store. "Hey," Monica said, keeping her voice casual. "Got a minute?" Latia glanced around nervously before nodding. "Yeah, what's up?" "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," Monica began, "about how they treat people. I think we need to do something about it." Latia's eyes widened. "Are you serious? They'll fire us if we even try." Maybe, Monica admitted, but if we don't stand up to them, nothing will change. Latia hesitated, her fear evident. I don't know. I've seen what happens to people who speak out. They get blacklisted. No one will hire them. That's what they want you to think, Monica said firmly. But if we come together, if we have proof, they can't ignore us. The younger woman looked at her, a flicker of hope mingling with her apprehension. You really think we can make a difference? I know we can, Monica said, her conviction unwavering. Over the next few days, Monica worked quietly to build trust with the staff, finding allies in unexpected places. Miguel shared stories of his own struggles, while Latia began to open up about the systemic issues she had witnessed. Together, they started to piece together a picture of the culture within the store, a culture rooted in fear, favoritism, and prejudice. As Monica documented their experiences, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This was no longer just about her mission to understand the company's flaws. It was about the people who had been silenced for far too long. And she was determined to be their voice. The relentless hum of the Fenty Beauty store's morning operations was a familiar backdrop as Monica walked in for her shift. By now, she had memorized the rhythms of the place, the hurried footsteps of employees, the excited chatter of customers trying new products, and the sharp reprimands of managers who seemed to revel in their authority. But beneath the surface of these mundane activities simmered a tension that had grown harder to ignore with each passing day. For Monica, the weight of her observations had become almost unbearable. The hostility she had endured, coupled with the stories of others who had suffered in silence, formed an oppressive cloud that followed her everywhere. Today, that cloud felt particularly heavy. She had spent the previous night reviewing her notes, piecing together the puzzle of the toxic culture she had uncovered. The patterns were clear: a lack of accountability among management, blatant favoritism, and an insidious undercurrent of discrimination that pervaded every level of the store. And while she had allies in Latia and Miguel, their fear of retaliation was a constant reminder of how deeply entrenched the problems were. As she donned her apron and gathered her cleaning supplies, Monica resolved to push further today, to challenge the system in small but significant ways. If she was going to bring about change, she needed more than just observations. She needed proof. The day began like any other, with Kate barking orders and Connor making snide comments as he strolled through the aisles. Monica focused on her tasks, her sharp eyes and ears taking in every detail. She watched as Kate chastised a cashier for smiling too much, and as Connor ignored a customer's questions in favor of flirting with a younger employee. By midday, Monica was tasked with cleaning the staff break room. It was a familiar chore, one she had come to dread not because of the physical labor, but because of the social dynamics that played out there. The break room was a microcosm of the store's culture, a space where hierarchies were reinforced and the marginalized were reminded of their place. As she wiped down tables and emptied trash bins, a group of employees gathered in the corner, their laughter loud and boisterous. Among them was Connor, his voice carrying above the rest as he recounted a story that left the others in stitches. And then she says, "Oh, I'll get that cleaned up right away," Connor mimicked in a high-pitched voice, clearly mocking one of the janitorial staff. Like, who even talks like that? You'd think she was auditioning for a soap opera. The group erupted in laughter, and Monica felt a flush of anger rise to her cheeks. She kept her head down, pretending not to hear, but her hands trembled as she gripped the cloth she was using to clean the counter. Just as she finished her task, Connor turned his attention to her. "Hey, cleaner," he called out, his tone dripping with mockery. "You missed a spot." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Monica. She straightened slowly, meeting Connor's gaze with a steady resolve. For a brief moment, the air crackled with tension, and then she turned and walked out without a word. Her heart pounded as she made her way to the storage room where she leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to calm herself. She knew she couldn't let her emotions get the better of her, not yet. There was still work to be done. Later that afternoon, during a lull in customer traffic, Kate called a staff meeting in the main area of the store. The employees gathered in a loose circle, their expressions ranging from bored to apprehensive. Monica stood at the back, her cleaning cart parked discreetly to the side. Kate began with a lecture on standards of excellence, her tone condescending as she outlined the ways in which the staff had supposedly fallen short. "We're a premium brand," she said, her eyes scanning the group, "and we expect premium performance. That means no slacking, no excuses, and no tolerance for mediocrity." Monica noticed the way Kate's gaze lingered on certain individuals, those who didn't fit the mold of the perfect Fenty employee. She felt a surge of anger as she realized how carefully crafted this performance was, designed to intimidate and humiliate. Then, to Monica's shock, Kate singled her out. "Monica," Kate said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd, "since you've joined us, I've noticed a lack of attention to detail in your work. We can't afford that kind of carelessness here." All eyes turned to her, and Monica felt a flush of heat rise to her face. She opened her mouth to respond, but Kate cut her off. "I suggest you use this as an opportunity to reflect on how you can improve," Kate continued, her tone icy. "We all have a role to play in maintaining the standards of this store." The humiliation was palpable, but Monica forced herself to remain composed. She nodded briefly and stepped back, her mind racing. This public dressing down was a calculated move, an attempt to reinforce Kate's authority and assert her dominance. After the meeting, Monica retreated to the storage room once again, her anger bubbling just beneath the surface. She pulled out her notebook and began scribbling furiously, documenting every detail of the day's events. Connor's mockery in the break room. Kate's public reprimand during the meeting. The pervasive culture of fear and intimidation. As she wrote, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her experience. It was about exposing the truth and holding those in power accountable. That evening, as the store closed and the last customers trickled out, Monica approached Latia near the registers. "Can we talk?" Monica asked quietly. Latia hesitated, glancing around nervously, but then nodded. "Let's go to the break room." Once inside, Monica closed the door and turned to face the younger woman. "Something has to change," Monica said firmly. "We can't let them keep treating people like this." Latia looked at her, her expression a mixture of fear and hope. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm gathering evidence," Monica replied, "documenting everything, but I need your help, and Miguel's. We need to show them that we're not powerless." Latia hesitated, biting her lip. "It's risky. If they find out—" "They won't," Monica assured her. "Not until we're ready. But we need to stand together. It's the only way we'll make a difference." After a long pause, Latia nodded. "Okay, I'll help." Monica smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. Together, they would challenge the system that had silenced so many for so long. As she left the store that night, the city lights twinkling around her, Monica felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready for the fight. The next morning brought a rare calm over the store. The usual hum of activity seemed subdued, though Monica knew it was only temporary. She had barely slept the night before, her mind spinning with plans and strategies. With Latia's cautious agreement to help, she felt the tide begin to shift, but there was still so much to do. Monica arrived early, her disguise as seamless as ever, and set to work before the rest of the staff trickled in. She moved through her tasks with precision, keeping her ears open for any conversations that might reveal more about the store's culture. By midday, the pace had picked up, and the familiar sharp tones of Kate's voice echoed across the store. "Monica, I need you in the stockroom," she barked, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Monica followed Kate into the back, where a stack of boxes awaited unpacking. Kate crossed her arms and frowned. "We have a VIP visit this afternoon, so everything needs to be perfect. That means no mistakes. Understand?" "Yes," Monica replied, keeping her voice steady. Kate smirked slightly, clearly enjoying her authority. "Good. And remember, appearances matter." With that, she spun on her heel and left. Monica set to work carefully unpacking and organizing the products. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. She knew the upcoming VIP visit would be the perfect opportunity to observe how the staff and management behaved under scrutiny. If there was ever a moment to reveal the truth, it would be during this high-pressure scenario. As she worked, Miguel passed by and gave her a discreet nod. Later, he slipped her a note that read, "Meeting in the break room, 8:30 p.m." The rest of the day unfolded in a whirlwind of preparations. The staff bustled about, ensuring every surface gleamed and every display was perfectly arranged. Connor's usual smugness was replaced with an air of nervous energy, and even Kate seemed uncharacteristically tense. By the time the VIP arrived, a regional director accompanied by a small entourage, the store was a picture of polished professionalism. The staff put on their best smiles, their voices honeyed as they greeted the visitors. Monica observed from the sidelines, her cleaning cart positioned discreetly near the edge of the activity. She watched as the director made polite small talk, his attention drifting from one display to the next. The staff's deference was palpable, their interactions choreographed to project an image of harmony and efficiency. But Monica could see through the facade. She noticed the subtle glances between employees, the way some avoided eye contact, the tension in their shoulders. It was clear that the polished exterior was just that, an exterior carefully constructed to hide the cracks beneath. At one point, the director paused to compliment Kate on the store's performance. "You've done an excellent job here," he said, his tone warm. "It's clear you run a tight ship." Kate's smile widened, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. We pride ourselves on maintaining the highest standards." Monica felt a surge of anger at the hypocrisy. She wanted to speak up, to expose the reality of what maintaining the highest standards truly meant. But she knew the time wasn't right. Not yet. After the VIPs departed, the store slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The tension lingered, though, like the aftermath of a storm. Monica finished her shift quietly, her thoughts focused on the upcoming meeting in the break room. At 8:30 sharp, she slipped into the break room where Miguel and Latia were waiting. The room was dimly lit, the hum of the fluorescent lights the only sound. Miguel spoke first. "We've been talking, and we think you're right. Something needs to change, but we need to be smart about this." Latia nodded. "If we go to management without proof, they'll just sweep it under the rug. We need something concrete." Monica pulled out her notebook, flipping through the pages filled with meticulous observations. "I've been documenting everything," she said. "The comments, the behaviors, the patterns. But we need more. We need testimonies from others, people who've experienced the same things." Miguel hesitated. "That's risky. If anyone finds out—" "They won't," Monica assured him. "We'll keep it anonymous. But we need to show that this isn't just a few isolated incidents. It's systemic." The three of them spent the next hour brainstorming, their voices low but urgent. They discussed ways to gather testimonies without arousing suspicion, how to compile the evidence into a compelling case, and what their next steps would be. As the meeting wrapped up, Monica felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the risks were high, but the stakes were even higher. This wasn't just about exposing the truth. It was about creating a space where everyone, regardless of their role or background, was treated with dignity and respect. The following days were a flurry of quiet activity. Monica, Miguel, and Latia worked together to collect stories from other employees, carefully documenting each account. The process was slow and painstaking, but the picture it painted was undeniable. A culture of fear and discrimination that extended far beyond the walls of their store. Finally, the moment arrived. Monica knew it was time to reveal her findings, to confront the management with the truth they had worked so hard to conceal. On the morning of the staff meeting, she arrived early, her heart pounding. She carried with her a binder filled with evidence, notes, testimonies, and even a few discreetly recorded conversations. As the employees gathered, the usual chatter filled the air. Kate and Connor stood at the front of the room, their expressions as smug as ever. Kate began the meeting with her usual spiel about standards of excellence, her tone dripping with condescension. But before she could continue, Monica stepped forward. "Excuse me," Monica said, her voice steady but firm. All eyes turned to her, and Kate's smile faltered. "Yes, Monica? Is there a problem?" "There is," Monica replied. She took a deep breath, then began to speak. "I've been here long enough to see how things really work in this store. The favoritism, the discrimination, the way certain employees are treated as less than human. It's not right, and it's not what this company stands for." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Kate's face turned red with anger. "I don't know what you're talking about," Kate snapped. "This is completely inappropriate." Monica held up the binder. "I have proof. Stories from employees, observations from my time here, even recordings. This isn't just my opinion. It's the truth." The tension in the room was palpable as Monica opened the binder and began reading aloud from the testimonies. Each story was a damning indictment of the toxic culture that had been allowed to flourish unchecked. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Even Kate and Connor seemed at a loss for words. Monica looked around, her gaze steady. "This has to change. Not just for me, but for everyone who works here. We deserve better." The silence was broken by a single voice. "She's right," Latia said, stepping forward. "We do deserve better." One by one, others began to speak up, their voices growing stronger with each word. The tide had turned, and there was no going back. The silence in the room stretched like an invisible cord, taut and unyielding. Monica stood at the center, her presence commanding yet understated. The neatly organized binder in her hands felt heavier than it should, filled with the weight of the truths it contained. Her words hung in the air, unanswered, a challenge to the oppressive hierarchy that had dictated the culture of the store for far too long. It was Kate who broke the silence, her voice sharp and defensive. "This is outrageous," she snapped, her usual veneer of control cracking. "You have no right to accuse us of these baseless claims." Connor, standing by her side, folded his arms and smirked. "Yeah? Sounds like someone's just bitter about being bad at their job." Monica's gaze didn't waver. "This isn't about me," she said firmly. "It's about the culture you've created. A culture where employees are disrespected, dismissed, and dehumanized. And it's not just my opinion. These are their voices." She held up the binder. The room, previously silent, now buzzed with an undercurrent of whispers. Employees glanced at one another, some nodding subtly, others shrinking back in fear. It was clear that the tide was turning, but the battle was far from over. Kate's voice rose, her attempt to reassert control obvious. "Enough of this. Monica, you're done here. Leave the premises immediately." Before Monica could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "She's right," Latia said, stepping forward. Her voice trembled, but her resolve was unshakable. "We've all seen it. We've all felt it. The way you treat people, it's not okay." Miguel followed, his deep voice steady and calm. "This isn't just about one or two people. It's about all of us. And it needs to stop." Kate's composure faltered further, her face reddening as more employees began to speak up. One by one, they shared their stories, each one a damning indictment of the toxic environment that had thrived under Kate and Connor's leadership. "We're not allowed to make mistakes without being humiliated. They only promote people who look and act a certain way. If you speak up, you're punished. We're all afraid to say anything." As the voices grew louder, Kate's attempts to regain control became increasingly desperate. "This is insubordination," she shouted. "All of you are putting your jobs at risk." It was then that the regional director, the very same VIP who had visited the store only days before, walked into the room. His expression was stern, his presence instantly silencing the uproar. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his gaze sweeping across the room. Monica stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Monica," she began, her words careful and deliberate. "I've been working here undercover to observe the conditions of this store, and what I've seen is unacceptable." The director's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Undercover?" Monica nodded. "Yes, I'm not just an employee. My name is Rihanna Fenty. I'm the founder of this company." Gasps filled the room as her words sank in. The employees who had mocked and dismissed her now looked at her with wide-eyed shock. Even Miguel and Latia, who had supported her, seemed momentarily stunned. Kate and Connor, however, were visibly panicking. Kate opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Connor's usual smugness had evaporated, replaced by a pale, frightened expression. The regional director recovered quickly, his demeanor shifting to one of professionalism. "Miss Fenty, I had no idea." "That's the problem," Monica, now fully Rihanna, interrupted. "You didn't know, no one knew, and that's how this environment was allowed to fester. I've seen the favoritism, the discrimination, the outright cruelty. This isn't what Fenty stands for." She turned to face the employees, her voice strong and clear. Fenty Beauty was built on the idea of inclusivity, of celebrating everyone's unique beauty. But that vision means nothing if the people who work here don't feel valued or respected. That ends today. The director nodded, his expression grave. "You have my full support in addressing this, Miss Fenty. Changes will be made." Rihanna looked directly at Kate and Connor, her gaze unyielding. "And it starts with accountability. Kate, Connor, you're both relieved of your duties effective immediately." Kate's face turned crimson. "You can't do this," she sputtered. "I can," Rihanna said simply, "and I will." Security arrived moments later to escort the former managers out. The atmosphere in the room shifted, the oppressive weight lifting as the employees realized that justice was finally being served. Rihanna spent the rest of the day meeting with the staff, listening to their stories and outlining her plans for change. She announced the creation of an anonymous hotline for reporting workplace issues, as well as mandatory training on inclusivity and respect for all employees. Later that evening, as the store quieted and the employees began to leave, Rihanna stood with Miguel and Latia near the entrance. "You both showed incredible courage today," she said, her voice warm. "Thank you for speaking up." Latia smiled shyly. "We couldn't have done it without you." Miguel nodded. "You gave us a voice." Rihanna shook her head. "You already had a voice. I just helped you use it." As she walked out into the cool night air, Rihanna felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The fight wasn't over. There was still much work to be done to ensure that the values of Fenty Beauty were reflected in every store, every interaction. But tonight, she had taken the first step. And she wasn't going to stop until the world she envisioned became a reality. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and thought-provoking content. Check out our other videos for more incredible tales, and share this video with your friends to spread the message. Together, we can make a difference. See you in the next story.